Around about this time last year, I did a video highlighting some overlooked recent releases that I thought would be good recommendations for you guys to check out. And I thought I would do the same thing again this year because there are quite a few films that have come out in 2023 so far that I feel like have completely gone over people's heads and under the radar. So without any further ado, these are 5 films from this year that I think you should go out of your way to watch. The first film I want to recommend is called Polite Society. It's directed by Nidu Manzoor and is basically a very small scale action comedy about Indian traditions and beliefs and being a young Indian person growing up and having to kind of come to terms with those traditions and beliefs. I had heard quite a bit of buzz about this film when it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival back in January or February, and it took me quite a while to finally watch this film, and when I did finally watch it, I could completely understand what all the hype was about. It's a very enjoyable and fun movie with a lot of energy behind it that I think would really appeal to mass audiences. But the thing that baffles me the most is, even though I think that is the case, not many people know about this film unless you're in film circles. The best way I can sum up this film is that it feels like an Edgar Wright movie with Bollywood elements and visuals sprinkled over the top. It has the same energy and visual flair that you would expect to see in an Edgar Wright film, especially in terms of how it's directed and edited, but it has those Indian Bollywood elements that are added to it to really make it feel like its own thing. The film also does a really good job of taking things that in the normal world would just be very mundane and, matter of fact, and kind of exaggerating them in a rather over-the-top way as if it was an action film. And the way it does that, at first, can be a bit, you have to kind of get used to it. But the more the film goes on, the more you get used to it, and it really does work for the style of this film. The next film I want to highlight is a film that I could have sworn would be more talked about by this point, but unfortunately it hasn't, and that is Boston Strangler, starring Keira Knightley and Carrie Coon. The film follows the 2 reporters who investigated the Boston Strangler murders and eventually uncovered the identity of the killer. And all I'm going to say straight off the bat is that if you're a fan of investigative drama/thrillers like Spotlight, Zodiac, or last year's She Said, then this will be right up your street. I genuinely mean this in the nicest possible way, but Boston Strangler feels like a diet version of David Fincher's Zodiac. From the way it's shot to the mood and atmosphere that it's trying to convey, everything about this movie feels like it is going for the same sort of tone that Zodiac was going for. And considering I love Zodiac so much, this film was perfect for me. There are 1 or 2 areas that the film falls flat in. I don't think it has the same level of detail or nuance that David Fincher's Zodiac has. But again, if you keep comparing this film to something like Zodiac, it's never going to be as good. But I think for what the film was going for, and the fact that it was trying to tell this story of these 2 reporters, I think it does the best possible job it could have done. And like I said earlier, considering who is in this film, the subject matter, the tone, and the way it feels similar to other films like Zodiac, you would presume this film would be more talked about or more well known, but unfortunately it's gone completely under everyone's radar for one specific reason, purely because Disney just dumped it onto Disney+. As far as I'm aware, this film did not get a theatrical run at all, and got 0 promotion, at least in the UK anyway. I don't remember seeing a single poster or trailer for the film before it even came up, at least to the extent of other films that they do heavily promote. I don't remember seeing that much promotion around the film before it released. The only way I found out about this film was that it was through a tweet that Disney Plus put out saying, oh yeah, Boston Strangler is now on Disney Plus. That's the only way I found out this film had been released. The next film I want to highlight is a beautiful little independent film from the UK called Blue Jean, and this follows a lesbian PE teacher in the 80s living in the UK who is having to keep her homosexuality a secret because, for those of you that don't know, in the 80s, under Margaret Thatcher's reign as Prime Minister, there were all these laws and acts being passed through government and trying to be passed through government that were basically trying to illegalize homosexuality. Again, similar to Polite Society, this was another film that I'd heard a little bit of buzz around thanks to the UK film scene. And thankfully, by the time I actually got to watch it, I was on board with what everyone else was saying. This is a beautifully shot and very confidently directed film that really knows what it's trying to say, but doesn't go out of its way to kind of smash you over the head with the things it is trying to say in its themes. I think the thing that impressed me the most about this film is just how confidently directed this film is, and the fact that this is a directorial debut as well. Every single frame of this film oozes with beauty, but also a lot of sadness behind that as well. And again, I just can't get over how well directed this film is, both through the shots and the cinematography and the performances. Just everything about this film just works, and I genuinely can't understand anyone who would dislike this film. It's just a really, really well made little film that I think more people should see, because the messages at the center of it all are very poignant and are very important, especially with today's current climate. Even though this is set in the 80s, there is still a lot of stuff that the film says that I think is definitely relevant to today. And again, the way the film goes about saying those things and getting those messages across whilst also showing it all from this character's point of view is just so beautifully well done. If you come away from this video wanting to check out any of the films I've mentioned, please make it be Blue Jean, because it is such a gorgeous little film. The next film I want to talk about is probably one you've already heard of if you're a part of the UK film scene, but is one that I want to highlight anyway, just because, and that is Rye Lane, a rom-com that has thankfully restored my faith in rom-coms. I'm not going to say much about Rye Lane. I definitely think it's one of those films that is best experienced going into it as blind as possible. Just go in head first and let the film happen. Just let it wash over you, and I think you'll appreciate it more if you do that. But all I will say is that this is a really well made film that is really funny, has a lot of energy and charisma to it, but also knows when to bring in a lot of heart as well, and I think that's one thing this film does really well. But it's got a lot of cheeky humour and energy to it that just oozes from every single shot of the film, yet has a layer of heart underneath it that just still glues everything together. And again, the fact that this is a directorial debut just blows my mind, because this film is just so well directed, and again, feels like a confident vision put onto the screen. From the way they choose lens types, which is definitely prominent in this film because there are a lot of wide angle shots in this film, and whereas that would usually annoy me, I think it definitely elevates the tone that this film is going for. But again, that mixed with the just unique visual style of the film and its sense of humour, which is a little bit different to romantic comedies that come out nowadays. Again, this is just a real gem of a film, and if you've not heard of it, please go and check it out, because for a romantic comedy, it is actually really good. The last film I want to mention is possibly one of the best films of the year, and is a film that I didn't really know about until I'd heard a few people hyping it up on Twitter and on Letterboxd, and after a while I decided to check it out, and I'm really glad I did, because How to Blow Up a Pipeline really is one of the best films of the year. The plot of the film is really simple, and it's all you need to know going into it. The film is basically about a group of young environmental activists who are on a mission to sabotage an oil pipeline by blowing up two different parts of it. The film as a whole feels a bit like an indie version of something like Ocean's 11 in terms of its suspense and the way it just keeps cranking up the tension as the film goes on. And I think the way it does that is incredibly well done here, because the film, and I wasn't expecting this going into it, but the film takes time to really get to know each of these characters individually by cutting away to why they joined the group in the first place. And I was not expecting them to do that in this film. I just thought it was going to be a very tight hour and a half, suspense-driven thriller. It just finds all these minute little things to keep cranking the tension and making the overall situation that these characters are in suspenseful as hell. But then you'd have those added elements of cutaways to getting to know why these people joined the group in the first place, and giving each individual person in the group their own distinct motivation. It's not just a case of one person led them and the rest of them just came along for the ride. Each of them have a distinct reason for being there and wanting to do this. And the fact that the film goes out of its way to do that, I thought was something it didn't necessarily need, but I'm grateful that it did that. However, on top of that, you have some gorgeous cinematography that is really gritty and gets down and dirty with how it really emphasizes the tense nature of this film. On top of that, there is also a brilliant synth-driven score by Gavin Brivik that really pulsates the film forward and adds even more tension to some really mundane little moments that wouldn't necessarily be suspenseful in the grander scheme of the film. If you have not seen How to Blow Up a Pipeline or any of the films that I've mentioned in this video, please do check them out. I think they are all worth your time for their own separate reasons. With all that being said, if you enjoyed the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Leave me a comment in below what you think of some of these films if you've seen them, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.